going to invite our next speaker up, who is Dermot O'Donovan. And Dermot is head of department in GMIT and looking after the whole Letterfrack suite of programs in the furniture and furniture design area.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks to Helen and to Louise as well, I suppose, for inviting me to make a presentation. I feel a little bit guilty about ending that discussion abruptly, because I think that's really what today is about. It's not necessarily giving information on a one-way flow, which I'm going to give you for the next half an hour. It's about actually people getting together, of course, and discussing the issues that are pertinent to the whole area. So, I'm head of department at GMIT Letterfrack. I've been there for the last 3 years as head of department. I lectured there for a time before that. And today is just about a presentation to you about what we do. It's a different approach. It's one that's evolved on its own in a lot of respects, without templates. And it's just to give you an idea of what happens on our campus and how we approach and integrate not just craft, but very much a technology approach to craft as well. So just an idea to give you, I'm going to break it up into two major elements. One is about where it started, how it evolved, what the programs are and the program development that took place. Looking then at the skills acquisition, but really focusing on students, student work, how we approach projects, which is a major part of all the 3 and 4 years of it. And I suppose in the back of it all the time is an industry focus. We're industry focused and have very strong links with industry. And that industry, from a furniture perspective, is very diverse and disparate, very dispersed all over the country. So for those of you who haven't been to Letterfrack and to Connemara, although nearly everybody has at some stage been there, maybe when they were young or to the Gaeltacht areas in South Connemara, Letterfrack is about 100 kilometres west of Galway, and it's very much on the Atlantic coast and very much on the northwest coast of Connemara. Mayo and the Killary are just alongside us there. And the story of this presentation in some respects is how it kind of went from this, which I mean it was touched upon the history of the college and the place, and how it has progressed, especially over the last 15 years, to somewhere that looks a little bit more like this. And this was actually taken last summer, and it was the YASA, the European Assembly of Student Architects convention took place on the campus. 400 young architects came here, and this photograph wasn't actually to record the event, it was to record the wonderful blue sky that they got that day, because it rained for 10 days while they were there. So they have their wellies, you see a lot of them going through muck, etc. But I suppose it typifies what happens on the campus. A lot of new things happen all the time, and we're very open to approaches all the time of different events. It's a very unique approach that began, and again Helen touched on it in terms of the initial developments, and it was Connemara West, who are a rural development community organisation, came up with an idea of running short courses in the early 1980s, and really to attract young school leavers, young males particularly, to give them skills. There was an awful lot of immigration taking place from Connemara at the time, and it was a way of upskilling people, giving them opportunities. In 1987, however, the programme that they were running was coming to an end, and they sought a partner. And Galway Mayo Institute of Technology, it's called Galway Mayo Institute because it has a campus in Castlebar, also in County Mayo, came on board as a partner in that approach, and effectively came to support the programmes and run and manage those programmes. And initially the programmes were very much focused on the furniture industry. So there'll be a lot of visuals in a minute. I'm just going to give you some overview of information just so you get an actual feel for the involvement on the campus. In 1987, the research that was taking place was that the furniture industry was lacking in some key areas of expertise in terms of design, production, management and marketing primarily. Connemara West obviously had an interest in rural development, while GMIT very much had an interest in providing graduates with the requisite skills that were required by industry. And that's really how the partnership approached it, and that's how GMIT Letterfrack, or what's commonly called Furniture College, became about. So the very first program was a higher certificate in furniture design and manufacture, and those of you who are interested in furniture design, Our furniture designer makers would be familiar possibly with the Parnham College in the UK, whose John Makepeace was involved in that. Buckinghamshire University, or college as it was then, which ran a suite of programs from restoration to conservation to design, and Rycotewood as well, and very much based on those small kind of colleges where hand skills very much design was the focus, and not so much about academia. Okay, and this is one of the things, once GMIT came on board, things began to change a little bit. Some of the UK designers, UK based, I said, because Dermot O'Donovan, who was one of the people who was very much involved at the beginning, is a Cork man actually, and he is working from the UK. Chris Simpson and Alan Tilbury. And Alan Tilbury worked with the Royal College of Art in the UK and still comes, he's 73 years of age, and still comes and runs workshops at the college. So there's been a lot of continuity while there's been an awful lot of change as well. Program development. As obviously things moved on and as GMIT got involved, GMIT would have had, there would have been an onus on it to, I suppose, reflect the demands of industry and also to reflect the demands coming from students. And more students were looking to upskill, get better skills, move from what was a 2-year higher certificate program and onto honours degrees, to allow in some respects to leave them with skills that could move them up the value chain or move up the chain of command inside in companies and become innovators, and not just be part of the operation but become an innovator in those operations. So the furniture, the BSc honours degree, and I'm talking all the time, you'll see about BSc honours degree, they're not BA. All of the programs we run are Bachelor of Science degrees. And they took on skills in project management, enterprise management, process management, automation, higher-end design capabilities. And enterprise management, management economics are intertwined with all of the programs. So even from second year onwards, they're learning about business. After that, a range of programs then began to be established. GMIT also found there was a demand for people with skills in furniture production. So a 2-year higher certificate program was developed with strong emphasis on production processes. A Bachelor of Science in Furniture Conservation Restoration, which was a very ambitious project when it was developed. It's run into a lot of difficulties in terms of marketing it, as well as finding job opportunities for those who come off it. So it's actually a program that's under change at the moment within the college and looking at different ways to approach it. But it was very high-end conservation, museum-type pieces, and looking at a piece of furniture and looking at them as a social document, as opposed to just restoring or making them look new again, being very true to the pieces of furniture they were working on. And gradually we became very much a niche education provider, because the furniture industry is not a huge industry, and it's not very well established from a network perspective, but we became a niche education provider in that field, and also recognised nationally and internationally as a centre of excellence. So, I'm coming to the end of all this information I'm going to give you and let you see some visuals in a minute. 1998 saw the beginning then of a large investment programme. Again, this was funded through Connemara West, who saw funding as opposed to through the Department of Education and Science. So this is where, in terms of a partnership, how it began to work. And in the year 2000, there was new machine halls, libraries, etc. opened, and they were designed by Dermot O'Donovan architects. From visual perspective, and we talked a little bit about architects last night at dinner, from visually they're very interesting buildings. We have lots of course, user-friendly, unfriendly problems with them, as you do with all new, interesting looking buildings. And they were nominated for the Biennale Architecture, so you may have seen them featured at times. And when the sun is shining, like it is today, even in Connemara, they look like this. When it's not shining, you can't really see them because it's all grey. So these are they're timber frame and structure with steel supports all the way through. And this is the library wing with a canteen underneath, and the roof. Connemara Letterfrack is situated right next to Connemara National Park, and Diamond Hill. Those of you who've been to Connemara would know Diamond Hill because of a walk all the way up. And that viewing from inside the library looks right onto the diamonds, so visually it's very stunning at times. And this is one of the main machine halls that was been built at the time. So it basically moved us out of that old building that you saw at the start, not completely, but allowed us into a whole fresh, modern suite of buildings and facilities, which was badly needed, and I suppose when you look at what's available now, possibly very lucky to get at the time. So just finally on the development of the programs, we took on a new direction in between around 2004-2005, and essentially created a program which seemed like a natural fit for us, because we were giving skills to students, and this is very interesting from the discussion we've just had. The feedback from technical teachers through the Technical Teachers Association was that they were under-skilled from a CPD perspective, and they were looking for people with higher skills in terms of particularly the technology subjects. So we're talking about woodwork, construction studies, also technical graphics, which is now called design communication graphics. So there's a design element, and you talked of in-training service for teachers, the T4, and this was a complete new launch 2 years ago, and they have done a fantastic job from our perspective in upskilling teachers. But of course it's a continuous process, particularly with design elements. So we created a 4-year ab initio program called Design Technology Education, which trains teachers effectively. So we have our skills base, and we've added on to that a range of education modules, brought in education experts, so the teachers go on teaching practice, etc. around the country. And this, of course, was a major change for the IoT sector. On top of that, then we had the Bologna Agreement, which has completely transformed any of what we had before was higher certificates now, and they're now ordinary degrees, honours degrees, people who only wanted to go to college for 2 years now to go to college for 3 years, which isn't always a perfect fit. But we worked in with that system, and obviously it does facilitate transfer of students around Europe, which is really what it's designed to do. So these are just the programs. The first 2 programs have a structure of 3+1. They have an add-on honours degree, and the one in orange is a 4-year straight-through ab initio honours degree. And we also have a higher diploma in education, which we started this year, and we support research level 9 master's students. We don't have thought masters, but what we have is a thought masters in GMIT, the main campus, that we use and piggyback on and create modules. It's one thing that the modularised approach has done. It's allowed you to create individual modules, and if you can find a fit for those in an awarded program already, a design program, it's a great way to actually create new models. So there is some nice flexibility in the third level system. And I think it was mentioned yesterday with the junior cert, talk about the junior certs, how much more flexible, even though we give out about it, it's much more flexible than the second level system in creating new things and new ways of new approaches. This is just to give you an idea of the growth of the campus. So, I mean, it's grown exponentially in its 20 years. You know, we have 269 registered students starting with us this week. The campus already is overflowing. We have some of the programs that run in Galway. 2 years of the honours degree program runs in Galway. So it's a very, very busy campus. It's a small campus. It's an open campus, but has grown quite a lot over the last number of years. And this is just our mission statement. So, you know, we're about providing dynamic educational environment to support students, and no more than today's event, on a path of development. And that's towards creativity, expertise in furniture and wood-based technologies. So that's an overview of where we were and where we're at now today. The furniture industry, as I've said, it's an immensely complex industry, and it's if you were dependent on manufacturing or aware of manufacturing, you realise how much it's changed, how much it's left our shores. We become project managers, a lot of fit-out has been done. Most of the furniture industry nowadays, very few products, for instance, are being made in Ireland anymore. We can't compete on cost, we can't compete on labour, we can't compete on materials, we have no natural resources of timber. All of those issues, we're on the other end of the world, so getting stuff to us is expensive. So the change in the industry has been immense over the last 15 years, and we've been trying to keep an eye and track that change. So naturally we've changed an awful lot, and we try to be flexible in how we approach that as well. So in terms of craft education at GMIT, we're predominantly wood-based. We encourage and allow students to use other materials, but really that's our area of expertise is wood. We have a very strong quality-centred approach. We work to tolerances of 0.1 of a millimetre with timber. And those of you who use timber, like, it's a bit of a ridiculous tolerance because timber moves about 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 millimeters in a week. So, but it's trying to get students with an eye for quality, an eye for that sort of level of quality. We tend to get people into our college who like working with wood. They don't necessarily want to always be designers or craftspeople. Some of them don't know, and we've talked about the roots to craft. They actually don't know what roots there are, a lot of them. But they know they like and have a passion of working with wood. That doesn't always mean that they're necessarily creative people, but they know they have a medium where they're comfortable with. It's interesting, we have quite a higher, I would say, than the normal proportion of people coming to us with dyslexia, which is an interesting thing, that because they feel, I would say, that this is also a medium that's easier for them to work with and not as challenging from an academic perspective in that sense. However, we have to teach them academic modules as well. We have a very strong emphasis on CIT-based learning. So CIT comes through from second year right through to fourth year, and the students engage in that very much so. And obviously we need to introduce academics, so it's about 50-50 in the first 3 years between academic and practical work. Craft and technology then are obviously linked through all the programs, and I emphasize technology there because we're very high-end in technology. The students learn very, very basic skills at the beginning, and everyone is brought from the same level, but they very quickly move on to power tools, machinery, automated machinery then as they move on, if need be. So in terms of how we deliver the programs and how we train students, really, I mean, first year is all about skills acquisition. So there's an emphasis based on skill building. All of the projects they do are linked into that. They also do foundation drawing, they do application design and furniture design process, they learn about furniture history. All of the modules, the nice thing is that when students come here, everything is focused around furniture. So yes, they have to do some maths and they have to do some management, but it's all brought back in and interrelated back into the discipline they're in. So instead of learning maths with the full maybe 200, 300 students in first year, they're learning maths and then the lecturers bring them into the machine hall. No more than this, which is a great example. How do they actually figure out the angles? So they would take it to the next level, not just the patterns, but they would work out the angles, etc. And so they apply trigonometry, they apply different mathematical procedures to those. CAD then is introduced in year 2, along then with the application of a lot of what we've learned in year 1. And then it builds from in years 3, they begin to do CAD, solid solutions, parametric modelling, design for manufacture, and then they look at also product life cycle, and of course that's become a really, really big player in terms of the economic impact of it, the economic impact of waste, and of course the environmental impact of what we do. And we are no more aware of that. When we get a trailer load of timber delivered to us, we know it hasn't come from Ireland. Okay, so we have a responsibility in terms of procurement, which there isn't a knowledge of amongst the general public at all. And it's something that's going to, I think, will come back and haunt us a little bit as we try to get ourselves out of this next cycle. I'm going to now look at the main program in terms, I've just selected one of them, and I've said craft is embedded in all of the programs, really, and technology as well. But this was the original program, Furniture Design Manufacture. I'm just going to look at the 3 years and show you some examples of work that gets done and how the students respond to briefs and how we actually construct those briefs in order to get them focused and give them opportunities themselves when they're actually leaving college. So this is a very simple marquetry. Well, I won't say simple, it's a marquetry project. It's a very simple brief that the students get. And marquetry is just looking at veneer applied onto a substrate. And the students get to design a piece. It might just be an A4 size piece. But they get to design it first and then implement their design into an actual practical approach. And obviously all these, this is the lighter colour is ash. The darker colour is a burr elm, I think it looks like. And the redder colours, I'm not sure how clear that is a dyed sycamore probably. And the students cut out the different shapes, match them up together, and the idea is you get a perfect match, so you don't actually see any gaps or glue, etc., and things like that. And it's all about giving them visual awareness and also allowing them sort of a template for their design. So they're very traditional skills. We're still teaching them in first year, even though they move on quicker nowadays to machinery and automation. A project like this is, again, building on all the techniques that have been introduced in class, through practical classes and practical training. And every element of the table that you see is creating with them a new understanding of how furniture is constructed, how things are put together, how things work, how members interact, visually how things look. Okay, and then at the end the students give given a little bit of a template in first year in terms of they produce a different top themselves. And it's great because those of you who are involved in design and craft know that when you give out a brief, you expect a solution. What's fantastic is when you get 28, 29 different solutions to the same brief. So someone might use a bit of slate, someone might use a bit of glass with some shavings of timber underneath it. Some of them might use newspaper to cover the top of it and put a layer of lacquer over it. So it's great just even giving them simple elements of design to do how they actually interpret those briefs. Again, the last project is normally a design brief, and I suppose I picked this one because while it's not typical of what the students will do, it's very sculpture and artistic, and it houses a secret compartment in the top section of it there. But the finish is really, I think, and I hope it comes across the gloss on that finish, the student would have spent so many hours polishing this piece, would have absolutely become one with him before he finished up. And it's that kind of level of expertise and I suppose level of detail is what we try to instill. And it doesn't happen with all of them. I'm not saying all the students produce pieces of work as good as this, but it's just an example of what we like to see. In year 2 then, design takes on a new meaning because really, you saw it's a common first year. Once they come into year 2, they really begin their own area of specialisation. We launch project briefs, there's crits involved in those. We try to do as many live projects as we can. We get industry in. To sit on panels. The students get really objective feedback. It's very much a pressure point once the briefs are launched because they've got a fixed time frame to come up with their solutions. And we also, where we can, use industry experts in terms of guest lecturers to come in and do the design process with them. And obviously there's a research and evaluation because it's a Bachelor of Science. They must show and demonstrate their thought processes too. So they write reports and that becomes part of the assessment as well. And also an evaluation in terms of their self-evaluation, what they do different afterwards is a huge element of it. And I must stress that what the images now you'll see are first prototypes. The students, they only get to make first prototypes, and sometimes it'd be lovely to get them to make it again and see what they do differently at that stage. This was a project we worked with the National Museum in Turlough Park in Castlebar, and there are some books there which there's plenty of them, don't feel you have to leave any behind. This was where the gallery came to us, the museum came to us and asked us do we want to run a brief with the students to design furniture for the actual gallery spaces. So each student was given a specific space within the gallery. They visited the gallery, looked at the architecture because it's a beautiful building there as well. Looked at the spaces and designed actual pieces to fit in specific space. So some of them actually have to wrap around structural poles, some of them have to fit into triangular spaces, etc. And these are just some examples of those. This is a student piece that is actually designed to encourage children to interact with it. So you can see the handprints on it which are carved into it to get students to touch the timber. There's cork wrapped around it, okay, again tactile in nature. There's a hollow right way through it, which actually, when you think about it, if you're trying to lose someone in a museum, it's probably not the best idea. But again, these are student prototypes. So a very nice piece in terms of all those different aspects. This is actually one that wrapped around the pole, but the interesting thing here is just the detail and how timber is joined to the students have to work out how structurally things can actually withhold the forces that are going to be applied to them. And you can imagine the different people who are going to be using those in a public space especially. So they really have to make sure that they're structurally sound. And again, the seat detail is just a nice detail on that. This then is again a second year project. It's a creche furniture. There was a creche opened actually on site, a community creche, and they asked the students to design a piece of furniture for it. And this, I suppose, is where students are very much going from our perspective in terms of technology. This is second year work. And this seat won an award last year at the House and Home Crafts Council Award, or I think it was the Habitat Award at that stage. This was completely made on the CNC, so completely made by a machine. Obviously the plywood is joined together afterwards, and the seat in the background is the actual design. It sits in 5 different positions, so it suits people of different sizes. And this little one, which you call the multi-couch, I think it was called, or something in that respect, was the waste that came from the inside once it was cut out, joined all together, stained with an orange stain, and the other was a red stain, and finished with lacquer. And that student came up with the, he didn't actually do an awful lot of work himself, but he had to program the CNC, he had to design the piece, come up, obviously make a lot of mock-ups beforehand to make sure that it worked. And then he's produced something which is, if you're going to do something in Ireland for the industry, this is in some respects where you've got to be. Okay, it's different if you're doing one-off work. But this is solutions that can be done using technology and design and combining the two. Again, this was a retail furniture project, and just to give you some idea of the approaches the students are taking, we don't teach them leather skills, but this student had enough resources to go off and get someone with expertise in leather to actually work with them and do it. It's actually a flat pack seat. The retail element of this had to be transportable in a container, so if it was being made in the Middle East, it had to be able to be brought back here in quantities. So it's a very realistic approach to what's happening in industry in a lot of respects. This was another one, the same approach. Again, I've chosen these because of the use of colour. Materials is very mature from these 2 students, and they are actually 2 mature students. And this is what happens at the project brief stage. The person who's running the project, the industry expert, is in, and he's shaping it out and working out how it works, how it goes together, how it can be made better, how it can be made cheaper, how something can be changed to make it more cost effective. But also, and from the student's perspective, he's thought about the bigger picture too. He's thought about what it looks like as a piece of furniture, which is really the important element. I'll come to, I don't have too much more because I'm conscious that we're running late as well. Just in terms of the student profile, we are predominantly male student body, and someone spoke a while ago about the predominance of woodwork. I think it was Finbar spoke about the predominance of male students in woodwork and females in home economics. It's exactly the same. And our feeder schools, the secondary level, they're coming right through from us and predominantly male. And we're trying very hard to break that, but we've got to come up with some solutions innovatively within the college too to do that. And one of the things is by us collaborating with other colleges. We've actually tried to maybe collaborate with the nurses up in Castlebar a little bit, thinking that's something where we just couldn't bridge that gap between furniture design and nursing. But we're still working on it, it's not that we've given up. This is where UCD architecture students, who actually for the last 2 years have been predominantly female, which is really good, come down to us for a week, and there's a return journey made. And they work on a very, very open brief about installations, visual work around the college, completely unfurniture related really. And it's just about interaction with people, interaction with ideas, bridging different people coming from completely different backgrounds in so many different respects. But such a strong link, obviously, between architecture and furniture as well, which isn't always obvious. And these are just some of the works that they were doing, installation, did a lot of cobweb stuff this year in turn around the college, which was a little bit spooky at times at night, but it was a very, very successful project. Now in years 3, the projects move up a level and they really focus with industry. So the students in year 3 will also go out on placement, and a lot of their projects and research that they've done up to that date can be applied to that placement. It's a 20-week placement. They begin to use a lot more Inventor. I mentioned SketchUp there, and this is where students really begin to take on a mind of their own, because Google SketchUp is a free product. Inventor, Autodesk, AutoCAD, we pay for them. And the industry like certain packages, and we try to keep abreast of what the industry like. The students on their own seem to be changing that mindset because they found this Google SketchUp. It's a very, very simple product to use. You can draw very, very quickly in 3D. Its weakness at the moment is that it doesn't actually link to CNC, so if you're in a production environment, it's not the best method to use, but the students can get results really, really quickly. Now, I'm sure those of you who are teaching know that once they finish their drawing exercises and they have a computer, they like to draw on computer where possible. Trying to get them back into sketching, observing isn't always the easiest thing. But SketchUp is just one of those products that's come on the market and it's probably going to be a very effective tool, and it's a free product, so the students love it. And these are just some of the results. Well, this is one project that was chosen as a third example of a project, and it's where they get to design a contract manufacture project. It's they get to design. This one was a library for a lawyer's office. It was, and they're given a blank space, and they must come up with all of the designs. They don't make them, okay, and these actually look like models in the bottom here. These are actually Google SketchUp photographs, which is a publisher who sits on top of it as well. But the interesting thing, what they have to do here, is they also have to do a bill of processes and a bill of materials for every single item of furniture. So it's very much with an industry focus, while they also have to actually come up with the solutions as well. But they must think about design for manufacture, how everything can be made, etc., etc. One of the other projects, again, we're very open to new projects, and suddenly someone can come in September and say, well, what about this? And it can be, if there's time, we can do it. The OPW came to us 2 years ago and asked us to design some podiums for Mary McAleese, President of Ireland. And these are actually to sit in Orson Neutron. And we presented 15 prototypes to students, mock-ups. The presidential aide came down and looked at them, picked 3, and 3 were made to finished prototype by the team of students. So 3 designs were chosen, 3 student designs, and then the team came into 5 groups, or 3 groups of 5, and they all made 3 prototypes. And the 3 were actually kept by the Orson Neutron, and they sit there now. And one was replicated by a graduate then later. So it was a fantastic, absolutely fantastic project for the students to be involved in. So in terms of the placements, the students choose a company where possible. So this allows them then the flexibility to go where they like to go. And this has been a big improvement from the students' perspective, because it used to be as easy as that. But one of the big things we found in the last 2 years is that students now want to travel. Isn't that fantastic? Because they never did. Because they could get jobs here. They could leave on Thursday, and they could work Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, come back to us retired, and go through the next 4 days and go home again. Now that's not going to be such an option for them. And for students, that's not such a bad thing in the bigger picture, because it allows them to focus on their primary reason why they're in third level, and it's to learn. Okay? However, learning about the industry can only happen and take place by being out there. And by placing students, it allows them the flexibility to choose places. We use placement companies in Australia, we use placement companies in America, the UK. We had 3 students go to Zambia this year on a placement where they started up a workshop training young people in Zambia, giving them basic woodwork skills. And that's something we have to build upon over the next few years, sending more placement students out there and building up that area. So we're very open to how and where the students want to go. It's a very, very important learning tool for them from a development perspective. And at the end of the day, if they get on well in their placement, there's a very good prospect of them being asked maybe to stay on if they can make it, if they're having an impact on that. Just to give you an idea then in terms of year 4, what happens often with placements, and this student, and I've just picked one example here, this student has done his placement in America. He's working with a company with a very high-end educational remit for making chairs. They make chairs for a lot of the private colleges in the States. But suddenly the owner was beginning to lose contracts to much more modern, sleeker chairs. And this was causing him some concern, and he didn't understand it, and design in the States is a lot more conservative than it is in Europe. So this student took on a project and looked at very detailed research in terms of what library users wanted, what librarians thought worked well, but primarily what users of library chairs liked and how comfortable. Did they need backs, did they need arms, did they need wheels, did they need to be collapsible chairs for different use, etc. So he did an awful lot of work and created a couple of models and produced 2 prototypes. Now, again, these are just prototypes, so it's the first go he's done. He's put them in a library situation and presented them. And I personally would have said they're not the finished article at all. But not only has he done that, the student would then have done this. And this is a complete working drawing for that chair to go into manufacturing absolutely as it stands. So he's worked out every nut and bolt, every single angle, every single view that you require from a production floor perspective. The chair is also designed predominantly on the CNC. So you're cutting out your labour costs, which through innovation really, and if people are going to begin exporting in Ireland in terms of furniture, that's one of the key elements, to be able to use technology where it can be and where it's appropriate to use it. So this is how, and I suppose this probably slide says an awful lot about what we are, because this is, I would say, sort of the uniqueness of Letterfrack in terms of its approach to actual learning and what students come up with. That just gives you some idea of the impact on the industry. We do a lot of innovation vouchers. We're getting into innovation partnerships in Letterfrack Ireland at the moment. Very small number of students leave us and start up their own businesses, interestingly enough. Primarily they go into business and begin to have an impact. I've just mentioned two sort of the better known makers there. John Lee, whose future has seen an awful lot in stock press in the last few years, and Brian Murray. But again, small makers, probably individual, do most of the work on their own. It's a very, very difficult environment to be successful in, as I'm sure you're all aware. But thankfully, there are opportunities more now than there were maybe 10 years ago in Ireland. We wouldn't have had those opportunities for our graduates. Now they do have opportunities here. They have great opportunities in the UK with some very good work taking place there still. And really, it's a global market at that stage. This is just an idea of where our graduates come up, and we've talked about this already this morning. I mean, we have to completely rethink the industry. Any research that's been undertaken by us in the last 2 to 3 years is completely null and void at this stage. And we're undertaking that research this year, both with our graduates and with the industry again, to see what is it the industry needs at this stage. Because there's no doubt it's on the rise at the moment. Just to give you an idea, and I'm nearly finished, you'll be thankful to know. It is an awful lot of information I'm giving you. Sorry about that in a very short space of time. Just in order to give you an idea about some of the obstacles then, and these are obstacles we face all the time. The location is one. We're in a very, very remote area, and one of the big arguments about Letterfrack at the beginning was, how can you have a furniture training centre in such a remote area that isn't serving the industry, or that isn't connected to the industry? And of course that's when the industry was very much focused in Navan, in Monaghan, in those areas, and those of you who are aware of the industry know that's not there anymore, and those places have closed down, they've moved on, and now it is very much an all over Ireland where people are practicing from. But this is one of the problems with us, is how do we connect with that industry? And one of the big things that we've invested in, that we've been lucky to get investment in through the HENet, is the huge wireless internet connection over the last 2 years. Which has facilitated us in terms of communication, in terms of transfer of information as well. Obviously, it's a very beautiful area where we work, and I just mentioned there, it isn't always appreciated when you're 18. We have students coming to us, and I think no matter what, how much they like what they're doing, they are shell-shocked for a while. And we try to support that. We've introduced a really good initiative this year called PAL, which is Peer-Assisted Learning, where mentoring takes place from 2nd, 3rd and 4th years with the first years. And it's all about bridging the gap between 2nd and 3rd level education. Making those students feel that they know and know the way around the space, know how to get access to services that they require. And for us, it's also about getting them integrated into that whole new environment that they're going from. Okay? And we get, I mean, the students come from predominantly the west of Ireland, about 50%, and then it's a spread right from Cavan, Dublin, right down to Wexford, Waterford. I mentioned the gender mix. We have very good mature students all the time coming through. It's a very difficult program actually to get in as a mature student, and very competitive. And rapidly changing industry, I've mentioned that, and we try to keep changing and reflect the changes in industry. But you can overchange as well, and that's very difficult because people have to settle in, and you teach one module 1 year, there's no point in changing it every single year. You have to bed in a little bit, and that's where I would think at the moment a little bit of a bedding in exercise. And then just, I suppose, an outlet for our students. We have exhibitions all the year in summer, and the students exhibit their work, and there's a gallery space in the college for visitors who come there. But we encourage and endorse and facilitate where possible students to get into competitions, national and international competitions. Fantastic process for them. And they were just some of the student winners last year. And I think one of the big feedback we get from these competitions is the reason that they stand out, because because they've got a finished product in front of them, and it is something that people can look at and sit on or move about, look underneath and see how it's made, as opposed to perhaps a prototype. And that is just some of the key contributors to what we do. Relatively young staff, versatile programs, a small campus, which is a key element, there's no doubt, to attracting people to the campus and keeping people on it. Having an open relationship with your lecturers, having an open relationship with heads of department, with program coordinators, being able to approach people is a key element. And it's very good for students to make themselves feel that there's a voice that they can talk to. And the other thing, I suppose, is collaboration with external bodies. We'd be very interested in collaborating all the time. We realise that we need the collaboration process in order for ourselves to keep going as well. And final one there is transferable skills. We like to think we're giving students skills that if they don't fit into one area, if it's not even the furniture industry, that they'll take those skills with them and go into another industry and have a positive impact. So that's the story of GMIT Letterfrack. My very last slide, and I was cheeky enough to get this one in. Just those of you who are interested in coming to Letterfrack, there's an opportunity to come in 5 or 6 weeks' time. We're running a conference on furniture design, contemporary furniture design. We have a lot of architects, furniture makers who are going to speak at it. It's really not dissimilar to a forum like this with a specialisation in furniture design. And you can log on to gmitletterfrackconference.ie, you can register there. So if any of you looking for an excuse to go west, there's no better one there.